Welcome to CyberSessions by CIISec. This episode is about diversity and inclusion within cyber. Enjoy the episode.
Hello and welcome to CyberSessions. I'm Oliver Bruce, CEO of Pinpoint Media and podcast host. With me I have Simeon, Heather and Nina. Heather, do you mind introducing yourself?
Yes, Dr Heather Melville. I am the founder of Clark Smith Advisory. I'm a senior advisor to Teneo Global Consultancy. And for my sins, and actually quite excited, I'm also the Chancellor of the University of York.
Very good. Thank you for joining.
Hey, I'm Simeon Quarrie. I'm the founder of Vivida, and I'm also the founder of an initiative called In Their Shoes, really focused on using storytelling and interactivity to make subjects that are maybe a bit complex, sometimes a bit boring, make them interesting and engaging, and really focus within their shoes on the inclusion and the importance of inclusion.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Nina Paine and I work at Standard Chartered and I'm Global Head of Cyber Partnerships, which sounds a very impressive title. What does that mean? It actually means just getting out there, making great relationships with our stakeholders. Those might be in law enforcement, those might be in regulators, or those might be in think tanks for the benefit of the communities that we serve. I'm also fortunate enough to be on the board at CIISec, where I look after our diversity and inclusion goals. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining. We're here to talk about diversity, equity and inclusion in the world of cyber. Nina, I'm going to come to you. Do we think there's an issue with DE&I in the world of cyber?
Well, I'm very fortunate in that I tend to work with loads of people who are passionate about D&I, and so I have a slightly biased view that we don't. And I work in a great company in Standard Chartered where D&I is massively important and valued. But the research shows that we do have an issue in our industry. And, you know, we've done a number of surveys at CIISec which say very clearly, you know, we did a survey a little while ago and 57% of women said that they felt that there were barriers to their progression in cybersecurity and that they didn't think that was going to change for a decade. Mm-hmm. So that makes really worrying reading for us, and that's why we're really devoted to making a change.
And you mentioned those percentages and looking at undergrads, you know, females, 12% of females are undergraduates, 23% are postgraduates. Simeon, what do we mean by DE&I?
So I guess we've got those key things. So one, of course, in some ways, I think the letters are the wrong way round. The inclusion is really one of those key things. Mm-hmm. Do individuals within the industry, within organisations, do they feel included? Then really we think about equity and making sure that each individual has a fair crack and opportunity at getting involved, has the tools that they need. Then you've got the equity, right? From the equity perspective, we really think about, do people have what they need in order to be able to take part in the industry? And then the outcome, we hope, if organisations and the industry is inclusive, is that we have a range of different people who have different perspectives, come at things from a different approach, and have different characteristics as well within the organisation. So I think the end ends up being, hopefully, diverse organisations and a really diverse sector.
And Heather, coming to you as Chancellor of the University of York and looking at those percentiles in terms of, you know, 12% of undergrads being female, 23% of postgrads being female, what does that mean to you and the University of York?
Well, it means that we've got to do some work, right? A lot of work. And I'm with you, Simeon. I don't do talking about the diversity because I think the diversity just allows people to get away with doing very little. They say, I've got couple of black people, a few women, a few old people. Mm-hmm. We're fine. If you look at us from the outside, we look fine. What does it feel like for those people who work there? So let's go back to university and the whole educational system. How do we create an inclusive educational system where everybody from whichever background, particularly socially demographical challenge backgrounds, have the opportunity to study and to bring their talent into the universities and then into the workplace? Because that's what this is about. We can see that if you live in a certain area, you go to a certain school, you go to a certain university, you work in a certain industry, and you're accepted, and you've got a career set for life. If you don't live in those areas or you don't go to a university, that is in the Russell group, then actually organisations, we know, I don't think they'll be good enough. And that's what we've got to work to really change that landscape. So people start to see the value in talent coming from a range of different places. I don't want us to talk about diversity as just women and just race, which is what a lot of people do. And they love talking about women. They're very scared to talk about race because it opens up a whole can of worms. But for me as a university, I really see that we want to be able to get to everybody. I want everybody to have no matter what your background is. So we might even say that at the moment, young white men between the ages of 17 and 40, I use the term young lightly, feel that they're marginalised at the moment. There is no place for them at the table because all their organisations are doing are talking about women and talking about underrepresented races. So they're feeling quite challenged. And for me, if you look at, particularly in cyber and technology, a lot of these young people, these young men, sit in their bedrooms at home, on their beds, creating programs. And actually, they're the ones that we want to try and create to get into the workplace and to get into universities. So I want to take it back to the place of how can we, as leaders in education and in corporate life, create a platform where these people will want to come and work for us. And once they're there, they will feel they're included. And my final point on that is we need to move away from using these marginal terms around initiatives, because when we say, for instance, the 10,000 black interns, in people's minds, they go off and say, oh, but you're on that specialist program, so you're not real. And they say that with women, and they say that around ethnicity. So really what I want to do is we must have initiatives that create the platforms and the journeys for everybody to go and not label them as such.
Interesting. And you mentioned maybe not marginalising it from an ethnicity point of view or a female point of view and looking more at the neurodivergent sort of piece, I guess. Now, contextualising that a little bit and speaking individually here, I'm dyspraxic. I have one GCSE. I went to university, granted, did a BTEC, but also went to 7 different schools. And there were ways that I coped with this to be able to get to essentially where I am today. But Nina, coming to you, what can establishments do to help those that are neurodivergent in getting through education and in turn getting into the world of cyber?
Well, firstly, the neurodivergent community is an amazing place for talent. The analysis, the creativity, and that ability to really focus intently on overcoming cyber criminals as adversaries is very much a unique skill set that we want to capture, and we do capitalise on that in all of our places of work, I'm sure. But as Heather said earlier, it's about getting in as early as possible, and there are lots of schemes already that are there to be used to do that. So Cyber First, for example, getting in there at school level. A lot of the law enforcement agencies as well do education programs about their career opportunities. So if you don't want to necessarily go into a bank like I do and work where I do, and if you want to do something for a public sector mission, the various government agencies as well have various schemes. And many firms actually target those communities. So I've worked in various places in the past, bless you, Heather, where we've targeted for the skill set that the neurodivergent community has. And then I think the advice is more about how can we then make the place of work or the place of education a really great experience for them, and just be leaders and managers who are looking at what is best for the individuals on a case-by-case basis. And again, it's the point that Heather has made, if I may. Let's not kind of overdo it on the labels. Let's just look at the individuals and how can we manage that individual best.
In terms of that neurodivergent piece and how it's becoming more accepted, I guess, by individuals both in industry but also that are coming through. We look at Alan Turing, for instance, who's incredibly famous, incredibly well known, had Asperger's. We look at how Elon Musk, when he went on the late night show in America, spoke about how he had Asperger's, for instance. It's becoming more accepted. Now, Simeon, if I come to you, what have you got to say around making it more understood, I guess?
I think we're going on a big learning journey. And so when we spoke earlier about the different characteristics, there's actually a lot that was not understood. particularly when we think about how people are experiencing the workplace. When it comes to neurodiversity or neurodivergence, I think a lot of us are being diagnosed late in life. We're going for a process at the moment where actually we're realizing when we look at the organizations that we're in, we have good diversity when it comes to things like, neurodivergence and the various neurotypes. But where there's often a challenge is understanding how we make the workplace feel more inclusive. How do we make adjustments that will make the workplace more comfortable? And I think that's where there's a journey still to go on. From the work that we've doing, so one of the things that we've been doing is doing lots of interviews to gather lived experience, and then we turn that into an interactive experience where people can walk in the shoes of a character, like in 3D. But first is that listening that we're having to do, so that interview process. And I think the thing that really stands out to me is that there's still a lot that we really don't know about what it's like to be in a person's shoes, working in a particular work environment. And actually, there are many, many that don't actually declare. They don't declare because they don't feel comfortable. They're worried about the risk, and they're worried about how they'll be perceived. Can they get into the job? And if they are in the job, once they step forward and say, for example, you did bravely, right? Some don't feel comfortable to do that, which means then that some of our environments are not as inclusive yet as we want them to be. So we can pat ourselves on the back in some ways and go, great, because yes, look, yes. But actually, we've got many more that don't yet feel comfortable to self-declare. I'm really interested in working out how do we get there.
And I've seen a huge uprising in the recent months and maybe the last year on LinkedIn specifically around this ADHD culture, and I don't know if you've seen this as well, but more and more people are coming forward saying they've got ADHD and ways of coping with this. And again, just going back, Nina, to your statement in terms of potentially metrics, KPIs and such like that we need to have in place to be able to measure this from an industry point of view. Heather, not wanting to put labels on it, but what would you say in terms of metrics and KPIs to make sure that people aren't just going, I've got ADHD for the sake of just saying it so that they get a job because they claim to be diverse? What do we do to be able to make it better for industry?
Well, I think what's quite interesting is how people are being diagnosed now. I'm seeing people in their 40s and 50s all of a sudden saying to me, I went to my doctor to have a conversation about something else, and they said I might have ADHD. So how has that suddenly become the thing of today that we're talking about? I also feel that all these organisations that win awards are very happy to get the labels of I'm one of the best places to work. How many of them have really great script writers that go and collate the information to get them in a place where they win those awards, but don't actually speak to the people that work there? How does it feel like? So I can remember many years ago working with a young man who he didn't have ADHD, but he had what's the one where OCD. And so people would laugh at him in the office because he would come in, his screen had to be a certain way, he'd have his phone and everything put, and if you moved it, he would really freak out. And one day somebody moved his stuff away, and I really went for them to the point where we gave them a written warning because that was making it unsafe for someone else to work in the workplace. So I really feel that we have to educate in organisations the importance of creating an inclusive workplace. What does that feel like? I recently had an accident where I broke my ankle, and I've lived the life of somebody with a disability because we take these things for granted. We take these things for granted that you can go to the turnstile doors and you run through to get into a building. Well, if you're on crutches, you can't do that. But what you don't have is somebody who's perhaps sitting at the reception or a security guard that has got enough sense to work that out and say the person can't get through because they're on crutches. Now, not talking about me, I then start to think about employees that work there every day. How do they feel? Worse, clients that come in for the first time. If they're in a wheelchair, how do they feel? And I've become a bit of a campaigner because I go to a restaurant and they don't have a bathroom downstairs. And I'm going, so where do people who've got disabilities go? I'm going to walk perfect soon, but where do people go? do you want me to go and put something on social media? Oh, we're really sorry. I think there's a bathroom upstairs. So it's about how we get people thinking about the lived experience, not about the theatrical side of winning the award and the accolades that come with it. And I think if you can speak to people, I'm a firm believer, if you interview your people in the organisation, they are your biggest advocates. You ask somebody who works for you, what does it feel like to work here? Mm-hmm. And they can talk about it openly. That's your best advert. The issue is, if you haven't done the work and you haven't educated the leaders for them to create that inclusive workplace, people get scared about people talking to your employees because they think they don't know what they're going to say. And that's where we have to get to. So I'm like you, I don't do the whole talk about diversity because I think they've done it, seen it, and they've worked around it. I'm talking about the lived experience. So how does it feel as a woman, as a black woman, to walk into somewhere for the first time? If I don't notice I'm black, I don't see why everybody else needs to notice I'm black. But if I'm being treated in a way that makes me feel that I'm black, I'm going to call it out.
Yes.
Because whether you're Irish or whether you're Polish or whether you're Swedish or whether you're from Africa or Indian, you're going to have that same experience because we haven't educated the person on the other side.
So I want to jump in here if you don't mind. So that exercise is one of the exercises we just did with a large bank. We interviewed lots from particular groups, gathered that lived experience of what is it like when you are walking into the lobby. What's it like when you're working? What's it like when you're going through the interview process? And then starting to understand the world in their shoes. And then, because in essence, I think that what inclusion really about for me is simplifying it down to empathy. A lot of this became a really complex industry. We did a survey, and even a lot that were in the industry as professionals felt that a lot of it was a bit of a money-making thing, right? Mm-hmm. We can just if we can simplify this down to what does it feel like to use a piece of software that's being created and not have the accessibility built in. Once we understand that, we then start to make changes. What does it look like to try to act on the best security practices that an organization has got if, for example, you don't have certain features and capabilities? So I think simplifying it down to empathy is really key, so that we also make sure we don't get into the position that you just mentioned earlier, which was, I have ADHD, therefore I get job. No, that's not what we're looking for, right? What we want to make sure of is that everyone has what they need in order to be able to do a great job within an organization.
And I'll hop in if I may.
Yeah.
It's just, it's the empathy and it's the active listening bit, because again, in our firm, we just thought, well, we can probably massively improve various things that we do as a firm around attracting more women into cyber. But before we did anything, we said, let's just ask. Let's just ask. And it was really shocking that the majority of women said, it's my lack of self-confidence that's holding me back. Because actually, there's quite a lot of opportunity, but I just feel really, I don't want to put myself forward. And, for somebody that's fairly confident like myself, it's kind of, goodness, like, really? Well, that's something we can definitely help on. So then you can sort of do all of the mentoring, and we've set up mentoring programs, etc. But even now, I still get senior women in cyber who still ring me up and go, I went to a really important meeting with all of the seniors and I felt just such a lack of confidence. I started to speak really fast. And I'm thinking, like, this is deep-seated. Yeah. So we have to just, continue that, not just at sort of entry level, but throughout the way, because it is deep-seated in, more women than sadly I'd like to say.
Can I add to that? Because I'm recently just working on a program that's targeting black women. And I'm doing that because you don't see hardly any black women in the C-suite roles. And these are pipeline of talented black women who don't need training, by the way. They don't need fixing, because the first thing someone decides, we need to fix women. They don't need fixing. What they do need is the opportunity to meet other women who have walked that way, other men who are senior who say, I wouldn't have known who you were if you didn't come and speak to me. So there is a piece of work that I am doing, which is targeting particularly black women and their pipeline. And it's talking about confidence. It's talking about their lived experience. It's talking about culture. Because when you have people from a different culture, their upbringing is completely different. What mummy told you to do as a youngster is keep your head down, keep quiet, do a good job and stay so you get paid every month until you retire. In today's generation, let me tell you, they're there 3 years. Yeah. And if they're not promoted, they're not getting paid, they've gone. There's a different sense of confidence that's come up. So what we've got to do is think about how do we bring this cadre of women to a place where they're confident, where they're meeting the senior people who make the decisions about what a good hire looks like. And whether we want to admit it or not, a big part of it is how you look, it's how you speak, it's how you engage with people, right? So dinners like last night are amazing because you've put some people in the room who are different and you've got senior people in there and they're naturally talking and engaging and networking and finding about each other. When a role comes up, the first thing you do is, I met this amazing person. I can't remember their name, but she might be wearing a blue top or whatever. And you can find out who they are that way. That's what happens predominantly in the world of business for men. It's just that they do it in a golf course or they do it in a pub or they do it in other places. And what we've got to do, particularly where people have got religious reasons for not going into public houses and they may not be very sporty, they are being excluded. So we've got to create a space where they can have the same voice and still be heard. And then what I want to do is move it away from those individuals a little bit and look back to the organisations and the leaders in the organisations who should be challenging their HR and should be challenging their business leaders and should also be challenging the headhunters and saying to them, when you come to me, this is what I want you to bring. Go out there, sling your hook and bring a range of people to the table. And by the way, if you don't bring it at the first time, we are not going to work with you. Yeah. Because it means they've got to do some work, some accountability that need to happen. And I'll end by saying, so one of the companies I work with, Teneo, we've recently had some interns in from the 10,000 black interns, which were great. Some of them were amazing. I spent some time coaching them. But what I think was really good is that Teneo were really brave and have said, I want to solicit feedback from each and every person of what their lived experience was. Because they recognise there may have been some challenges. And I really hold my hat off to them because we heard some lovely things and we heard some uncomfortable things. But we took the uncomfortable stuff and as a leadership team, I sat around the table to say, right, we are going to look at what the culture of our organisation is, why this is the lived experience they're having. Now, that's what I want to see organisations doing. What I don't want is for someone to say, oh, we had a really good experience. We had 10 people come in this year. It's really great. Let's get their pictures taken. Let's put it on the website and that looks really good. Yeah. I want to find out how many people have been hired. How many people did you get their feedback from about what the experience was like? How many people felt included when they went to the building? I think I was talking to somebody who at a dinner a few weeks ago, really senior guy, and he said to me one of the things that they did in their organisation, even when they brought interns in, they gave them money towards where they could live and travel costs. Yeah. Because there's no point getting somebody from an environment that you think, right, we're going to bring in somebody from a diverse background, and they can't travel to you, yeah, or they haven't got any clothes, because we take those things for granted, right? So we have to look at all of these things. I mean, the world of work looks different now, right? So we're not all suited and booted today, but we still have to look smart. When you look smart, you feel smart. When you feel smart, you feel confident and you act confident, yeah, and it's accepting. And my final point is that I also don't feel that we should create this environment where people need to fit in. I hate when I hear that. I'm not sure they'll fit in. Well, what does fit in look like?
Subjective, and it doesn't really make
Right,
sense.
exactly. I want to hear from people who are talented, who look different, who live in a different environment, who speak differently, who eat different food.
Yeah.
That's what makes the world more interesting.
And then that also plays into being able to trend hack or culture hack or work with individuals and organisations that have differing cultures, I guess, because of their lived experience. So coming to you, Nina, looking at how organisations big and small can attract talent, can open the doors to individuals that maybe they haven't already. Now, again, Heather speaks of organisations that may be slightly larger than SMEs and startups, but this is something that needs to be put in place for organisations big and small. So how can organisations start to put plans in place?
Well, you can definitely look at what's already out there. So you don't have to start and generate something new yourself. So there's lots of great return to work schemes out there. For veterans, you've got an amazing realm of opportunities there. Cyber First, as I've mentioned, that enables you to look at school level individuals, but also university level individuals. You can go out, there's a Cyber 912 Atlantic Council Challenge that's done in countries all over the world. And that takes people who are not technical and says, come along and we're going to give you cyber policy problems and we'll see how you deal with them. And universities from all over the world have come into it with great different mindsets. Those are great. You've got Capture the Flag for the more technical individuals. There is just so much already out there, and we'll make sure that if anybody wants to get that, contact me. I can give you all of that information. But the things that you can do immediately as well in your company is just start to have conversations. I came into the stadium today and I met the gentleman in charge of security here, physical security, and he said to me, I want to be a pen tester. And so I won't say his name to protect his identity. But I was like, right, let me go and introduce you now to this gentleman here owns a company who is all over pen testing as a very established leader in pen testing. This individual here has just started a startup and he's got massive seed funding on it. So, there are so many... Cyber is exciting. Cyber is inherently interesting. There's a little bit of the game mentality about cyber, as I said earlier, where you're kind of, it's us against the cyber criminals. I used to work in law enforcement, and that is incredibly motivating. Most people get excited. People in big corporates get excited by cyber because of that adversary element to it. So a lot of people are interested in it. Just go through your networks, find out people who are curious, who are determined, who are analytical, and who, to Heather's point again, are prepared to challenge the status quo on exceptional cyber people. And I've never recruited purely on qualifications. I recruit on all of those qualities.
Being able to think differently. And Simeon, coming to you in terms of that thinking differently aspect, how important to solve problems is thinking outside the box?
I think it's very important. Right? I think it's really important to understand that the challenge related to cyber is bigger than us against threats. When we think about cybersecurity, sometimes in that way, what we end up with possibly is a pipeline that has those who are already interested in solving that type of problem, which is where sometimes I've worked with organizations and you notice, there's a lot that come from law enforcement on a military background because the problem is similar from physical into digital. But I got involved in the industry, not interested in that area. I come more from a media background, more from a marketing background and a creative background. And I particularly love, naturally, the human part, right? Because I'm thinking, I like to work out how can I help people understand the subject that's complex and difficult? How can I, affect hearts and minds? So I think that we have to think sometimes out the box. Naturally, I think the industry already is thinking about out the box in terms of how we solve that problem. But then by understanding that, we then realize that we need different types of individuals to be able to look at the problem differently. And that's where we need to be in places, and at times quite brave, in seeing what happens if we bring in individuals with totally different skill sets, because then we might actually start to solve the problem differently.
What have you got to say about that, Heather?
Well, I still also feel that in the schools, in the educational system, we have the ability and the responsibility to bring up those children who sometimes are deemed as problematic children because their brains are wired different, and you haven't educated the teachers to what that difference looks like. So they put them in a box, and the box that they put them in can take them down a range of different ways. Whereas if they'd actually picked that person up and thought, you know, they're really talented, why don't I give them a project to do and see how they get on with it? And then I'll take the inserts or the outcomes of that project, and we can create something else from that. So I really feel that there is an onus on the education system to think different. We are in different times now. Look, 3 or 4 years ago, who would have thought that children would have been working and studying from home? We would all be working from home. It was unheard of. People would have thought you're mad. Move 3 years later, companies are starting to sell their properties because they can't get people back into the workplace, and they've got no reason to get them back into the workplace apart from collaboration and working together. So that means if we've had to change the way that we work, we should be thinking about changing the way that we study and that we teach and how we engage people. And that for me is what's really interesting. I think we have an opportunity to create change, and I think through the whole world of cyber, where the crimes that are being committed are so high, and also they're so personal. So I'm in a WhatsApp group, and yesterday I got this strange call out of the blue from somewhere in Nigeria. The man couldn't even say his name properly. He said it to me once, I just clicked off the phone. Then by the evening, a range of people had been approached by this individual. We don't know how. He'd got into the WhatsApp group. We think it's probably on Facebook. Then he started targeting people individually. So the fact that we are all aware of that, we all put a statement, said if this person contacts you or whatever. So the way that we're living in, we are really all being exposed to cybercrime every single minute of the day.
And we're becoming a lot more aware of that.
Yeah, and
to
it's an age thing as well, right?
Absolutely. And to your exact point about how we can now change the education system, it's been broken for an incredibly long time. I know that, having gone through school and failed on multiple occasions. Now, I was told I was stupid and whatever else. And no doubt, Heather, it's your life's work to start to change that. But as new generations become teachers, those that have been brought up and taught how to work in the world of cyber or engage on social media, surely education at school will become slightly easier in terms of teaching the next generation, in terms of how to access and be.
It should do, but you still have people behind it, and if they don't have an inclusive mind, they won't think differently. You know, you'll hear people say, well, back in the days I used to do it like this. And if you've still got back in those days people working there, because in lots of organisations, in particular across finance that I worked in for many years, the legal profession, a lot of the public areas as well, they are people who are jobs for life. So they've been there for 20 or 30 years and they ain't going anywhere.
So do we think it's a generation away from being more accepted and more?
Absolutely. But we've got to change that. So we've got to change that through the work we do with leaders.
Yes,
and the work that we do with leaders is about what does different look like? What does difference feel like? So they are now having children that have probably been described as being different in the workplace, in the school.
Sometimes.
Yes, right? So actually, if they can handle that in their own personal environment, there becomes a personal and emotional impact to saying, actually, we should be doing this because I've just experienced that with my own child.
Yes.
Right. Where we've had a problem is where, actually, I've never had that, so I don't believe it. I don't know what it looks like to work with someone who's different or does things in a different way. So I'm not going to change my mindset. My company is going to look like A, B, C, D, and always that way. So, you know, it's like when we think about even people who are older, companies like John Lewis's and Asda and those, they're smart because they're bringing in and B&Q, much older people, bringing them back into the workplace. So making sure that, you know, they've addressed the whole ageist thing, creating a culture where they can come in, then start to teach some of the younger people that are there the skills that, for instance, for many years, many people who are over a certain age thought, I'm finished, I can't have a career anymore. But yet still they are holding on to the talent and the experiences that help organisations to thrive.
Absolutely. And Simeon, you nodded profusely at the point about leadership and such, like on first-hand experiences. What's your knowledge on that?
Yeah, I think it's to the point you were making earlier, Heather, is that when you think about certain age groups, perhaps, absolutely, that you can see that there is a shift, an exciting shift in terms of values, but making sure that our leaders really understand is really key. And there is a challenge there. Sometimes it's because their heads are so focused naturally on the challenges of work, on commercials and business. It's difficult to lift up the head and realize, some of those really important key challenges that organizations are facing. It's difficult to make the subject of inclusion really important to them, particularly if their focus has been on profit and tangible metrics, and sometimes culture is difficult to measure. But we have to make sure that we are able to position this in a way that brings leaders on that journey, and we have to do it quickly, because we need to keep engaging the next generations. And also we have to make sure that what we're doing is directly relatable to the communities that we serve.
Absolutely, and we're running out of time, sadly, but before
Can
we
I
go...
just add one point?
Of course you
because
can,
it's
Heather.
so relevant
Of
to what
course you
you're
can.
saying. So technology, no organisation in today's world can survive without technology. No organisation can survive without people. And yet still, we still are talking about the commerciality of inclusion. We've got to get leaders not thinking that way. 10 years ago, they thought, we don't need to get a new IT system. We're fine the way things are, and then it broke when they realised they had to do it. We are in a place now where people have started to realise, particularly during lockdown, the most important asset they had was their people. And actually, that's going to continue for the rest of time, irrespective of what robots they bring in. You still need people with brains to operate it. So what we've got to get leaders seeing is that actually, when you have an inclusive organisation, the commerciality of your organisation goes up. And that's what they're focused on, right? So, and I'm very happy to have this debate with leaders all the time about commerciality versus cost. You spend so much money on stuff that doesn't matter, but you're not prepared to spend money on creating an inclusive culture where the people in your organisation matter. And actually we see that when you have a great leader, that it builds in loyalty. You don't then have the costs of having to replace people so often. And let me end by saying, this younger generation that are coming up, they are not working in any organisation for any amount of time that doesn't demonstrate inclusion and equity. And I see this with young men. When they're at university, they study with a group of female friends, and they cannot understand when they all get together for their monthly drinks or whatever, why the females' careers are not pivoting in the same way that theirs are. And they will have debates about it. So you imagine that group of people in your organisation having that debate. And of course, what do? They go onto social media and they talk about it. So there's a reputational cost to your organisation for not building a strong organisation that's fully inclusive.
Absolutely, and I think there's probably multiple people listening to this podcast that will want to ask you, Heather, Simeon and Nina, questions, no doubt. But thank you from me. Before we go, if you wouldn't mind just letting people know where they can get hold of you so they can carry that debate on with you, Heather.
There's a range of people. Just Google me or go on LinkedIn, but you can get me at heather.melville@teneo.com.
On LinkedIn, Simeon Quarrie. I'm on most social media channels. It'd be great to chat.
And I'm Nina P. Cyber, original, not, on LinkedIn.
I love that.
Well, guys, thank you ever so much. This has been Cyber Sessions. Thank you ever so much for listening.